Test, 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 test. There we go. Okay, we got some sound now. Let me know if you can hear me now. I think we should have we could have there we go. Still no sound? Okay, no, we're good. Okay, yeah. Okay. So I'll yeah, boomer moves for sure. So I'll show you what happens. So basically, we've got these fancy studio mics, and on the mic there's a mute button. I hit the mute button on the on the mic. I was like, man, I know I've got the live figured out. I was like, but what is it? Of course, it's the button on the friggin' mic. Anyways, thanks so much for joining me tonight on the live. It's the eve of the election, honestly, and it's a wild time. We're seeing a lot of different things coming out around what we anticipate for a liberal minority or conservative minority. There's been new media that's been dropping, things that are just kind of honestly wild that have been happening, and obviously we can't be too remiss without recognizing what happened in Vancouver with the festival there, the Lahu Lahu Festival. So it's just it's been a wild weekend, honestly, and I kind of wanted to get into a few things and just talk to you a bit about some of the things I'm hearing, some of the things that I'm seeing, and a couple of things that I noticed about about this election, honestly, over the weekend, with only a couple days left until election day, and now on the eve of election. So I'm going to do my best to share a couple things with you all. Hopefully, we don't go the way of the microphone again. But so something that I wanted to share with you. So this was something that was sent to me by my mom, and she was like, she had already voted conservative, but it was very powerful, and it kind of speaks to the way that the liberals are controlling the narrative right now. So have a watch with me on this.
And she told me about a routine assignment that she had given to her 9 and 10-year-olds. And the children were asked to describe their dreams for Canada. So some kids wrote about a country free of poverty, others dreamt of clean air and water, but many also wrote about tariffs and threats to our sovereignty. Words that I hadn't met at that age. And I'm going to quote one: I dream of a safe, a kind, and a clean Canada. A Canada that is not the US. Our children should be able to dream about a positive future, not worry about an economic crisis. So to those kids at Glenn Williams Public School, don't worry. With your spirit, with that of your parents, and people like them across this great country, all pulling for Canada, we will emerge stronger.
So before we all barf collectively, one of the things that I noticed in that, though, was, and one of the things my mom had said to me, she's like, this is the kind of thing that really pulls on the heartstrings of all of these individuals across Canada. And like you said, you know, the psyop is real. Yeah, don't fall for it. And honestly, it is it is one of those things. I'm like, there's no way a kid put clean in their statement about about Canada. Like, give me a break. I could definitely see kids being concerned about problems with, you know, becoming the US, because they're hearing all this stuff coming through through their school system, through the media. But you know what, though? Like, the idea that that this kid is going to say, oh, you know, I dream of a safe, okay, safe maybe. But a clean Canada, I was like, no, that's like straight out of Carney's book. Like, there's no way. There's no way that that's a thing. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of a wild time. So one of the things that I'm looking at when you look at that, though, it is compelling, and it's compelling for a lot of folks who are parents who are sitting there thinking, oh, I don't want a Canada where my children are going to be afraid, and I don't want a Canada where they're going to be worried about the US. And this is what the liberals have been really good at doing. They've kind of been drumming up that fear of the US, of becoming uh, part of the US, and then putting that onto parents, being like, do you really want this for your children? Which we all know it's ridiculous that the Liberal Party is the one for the past decade that have honestly been putting the costs of everything that they've been doing onto the future generations. So when we actually look at who's going to be there for the kids, it's definitely not the Liberals, because they're the ones that are spending them into oblivion. But what it is what it is interesting, though, is that it is an effective campaign, and I think that's something where the Liberals and the Conservatives are, a little bit different in. And I know that we had kind of talked about this before, about the CBC and the kind of like the defining the CBC thing that Pierre Poilievre has kind of run on. And while it does totally make sense that they need to not be funded by taxpayer dollars, it really didn't make sense to make an enemy out of your mainstream media, because now your mainstream media is pumping out carny content like this and getting everybody scared about their children. And it's wild. And Tony, you're exactly right. It's a scare campaign. That's exactly what they're doing. And so this is what kind of annoys me, is that you have this fake fears around, well, you people are having real fears around these fake issues, and then you have real things happening like this weekend in Vancouver, that I don't even know how to touch this without making it a little bit political. And I'm not trying to be political about it, because I realize that this was a horrible, horrible incident, but we kind of have to talk about it. And I don't know if I saved the clip for you. No, I didn't. But I'll just tell you, basically, they had the Vancouver police on the CBC, and basically what he was saying is that the individual who's responsible now for the death of 11 people in Vancouver, they have many more who are in critical condition in the hospital, some people who are missing, uh, and people who just haven't been able to get a hold of their family members, um, that this person had a significant history with the police, multiple run-ins with the police. And this is exactly what Pierre has been talking about. I know he's off at a rally right now. If you're watching the pleb, he's the one that's kind of live streaming that for us all as well. But specifically, he's been talking about the fact that we have these individuals who are being caught by the police and then being turned away and sent back out into the public again. And then you have this kind of thing happen. And I just don't understand when you hear Liberal voters who are talking about the things that they're afraid of, and you see the ad campaign like I just showed you, and children afraid of becoming part of the U.S. Like, that's not what's at stake here. And even Carney himself, when he was talking in front of the public, said, I actually don't think that the US is going to use any military force on Canada. Like, that's just not going to happen. And so when you consider that, he's already debunked one of the major parts of this that, might instill fear, and then you have real incidences like this happening, it's wild that people are not focusing on that they're so, you know, bought into the media narrative. But anyway, I'm preaching, so I want to get off that one a little bit. But just to say that my heart goes out to the folks in BC right now. I don't think anybody should ever have to deal with that. And I will give a little more color to that story as well from just a personal perspective. I had the chance to sit down with a police officer after hockey one night, and we were just having some drinks, and I was just talking to him. I was like, tell me about your job. Like, what is it that you like? What is it that you don't like? And one of the things that they said to me was the fact that we will do all the work to catch a criminal. We will, spend the hours, spend the budget, send the person undercover, do all of the work of catching that person, and then bring them to justice. And justice isn't served because they're sent back on the street again, and then they disappear. So you could have somebody who's actually, because Nova Scotia has a high portion of African descent folks, so like people of color in and around Halifax. And those communities are targeted by these folks who are trying to round up individuals and bring them into, places of crime and into gangs and into trafficking. And the police are actively going, we are trying to catch these people harming these, minority communities in Nova Scotia, and we can't keep these idiots that we're catching off the streets because the courts are letting them back out again. And then you've got the Liberal government going, well, we need to make sure that these individuals, that their charter rights are protected. And I'm like, oh my good Lord. Just absolutely insane. So yeah, when I look at this situation in Vancouver, I'm like, it could have been Vancouver, it could have been Toronto, it could have been Montreal again, it could have been anywhere. Nova Scotia had a mass shooting, not too long ago. That individual also had a history with police. So we really just need to actually get a little tougher on crime here if we really want to make sure that folks are protected in this country. And we only have one platform that does that, and that's why I'm just like, I really think that like I said, I hate the idea of politicizing a tragedy because that's not what you should do. But at the same time, it's like, how do you prevent a tragedy? You need to look at the last one and say, what are we doing wrong? And how do we need to change this? And so I just saw there's Tony put in a super chat. He said, for Reg and Josh and the great work they do, go Canada, go Conservatives, rooting for you guys from down here in the US. Thanks so much, Tony. Really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. And Anthony Warner says, 12,000 on Pleb Stream. Yes. You know what? That was one of the things that I noticed at the rally when I was there on Thursday of last week. Wednesday or Thursday, one of the two. Yeah, you guys really showed up in numbers on the streams. And also the fact that there were so many people in person. I'm really believing that the polls are not getting it right. And I'll show you, there's a top pollster that I was following that I thought I'd like to share with you folks so that you can see for yourself. So I'm going to pull up that video. And it's just a couple seconds to show you and kind of give you some hope, because one of the things that I was finding was that I was getting really depressed about looking at the polls. But have a listen here for a second.
To put it in a nutshell for people who don't want to watch the entire video, the polls are very tight, but there are some very bright spots for the Conservatives. This is going to be a turnout election. Who can turn out their base more than the other party in the regions that matter? Now, the Conservatives have generally been trailing in the polls the entire election. At the same time, though, whenever you do confidence intervals, or like I'm about to show, whenever you ask people who's your neighbor voting for, the Conservatives are doing much better. I think that this election has the capacity to have one of the biggest national polling misses in Canadian political history, because there is just so many pressures to not say you're voting Conservative, and the Conservative base has actually become very minority heavy, people who are very unlikely to take polls, and I don't think pollsters have properly adapted to this.
So basically just saying that we're seeing kind of this turnout that, is showing in the polls that the Liberals are going to win. But when we see the turnout at the rallies, when we hear from folks, it seems like we're seeing more Conservatives. So it's one of these things that are just really, really frustrating because, everybody's like, oh, the Liberals are going to win. They're going to win a majority. And that's not what we're seeing and hearing on the ground. And I think that's kind of been the narrative of our time right now. It's like, I see something, I know something, I feel something, and yet the media and everything else is telling me something different. I'll admit if I'm wrong tomorrow, but just one of those things where it doesn't seem like that's the way that it is. And nature is beautiful. You're totally right. Stop looking at the polls. Go vote. Exactly. So, and one of the things that we see too is that there is a comment made. I think it was Tom Marquer who said, basically, when you see the amount of folks coming in and voting in the advanced polls the way that they did, it was like 7.4 million people voted in advanced polls. I was one of them, never voted in advanced polls before in my life. That really says something, and it's not good for the establishment, because usually when people are voting that early, it means they're voting to change government. So I'm hoping that means that when we see the election tomorrow night, and we'll be streaming that live. Josh will be there, so you can ask all your baby questions of him then. And we'll also have Jasmine Lane with us as well in studio. She flew in yesterday. Her and I actually went out to karaoke last night. It was a good time. She didn't sing any songs though, so go spam her channels and tell them that she should have sang at karaoke. But actually, maybe don't do that because she recorded me doing mine, and I don't really want that out for the world. I don't know. I've just maybe it was mutually assured discretion right there. I don't know. We'll see. But basically, we'll all be on, and we've got quite a few guests that we're going to bring on tomorrow night as well during the live show, so that we can hear from folks from all over the Canada, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what people are saying in their streams and their channels, and yeah, we'll be good, and we'll be excited to bring that to you. But yeah, meanwhile, back on the ranch here, getting back to um, what we just watched there. So this was one of the things that I did on Bridge City News when I did that interview. Is when you look at the polls, the amount of information that is being altered, withheld, the numbers, the way that they're skewing them. I don't believe that it's the case, but I don't think it's enough that we're going to see a conservative majority. And this is my prediction. I think we're going to see a conservative minority with the potential for a Bloc Québécois coalition government. I think that what you're going to see is that if it gets too close, though, for whatever reason you see the Conservatives and Liberals getting, neck and neck with votes, what's kind of crazy is that I think we'll kind of see a race to the bottom where people will just basically be like, how much money can we throw at Quebec to make the Bloc Québécois join in government with us? And so that's the part that, yeah, it's, yeah. Oh, Canadian Bagel is saying that they are seeing a CPC minority. Yeah, exactly. So definitely think we're going to see a Bloc Québécois coalition. And part of the reason for that, and why I think that you'll see a Bloc Québécois coalition with the Conservatives and not the Liberals, is because when you listen to Carney talk, and he keeps talking about the fact that, we want to turn 13 economies into one. Quebec does not want that. Like, they absolutely do not want that. And they've made it very clear that, they're a special a group, and that they want their own special treatment. And so I think that with everything that the Liberal Party has put into their platform, everything that they put into the uh, messaging that they're putting out there, speaks to kind of this consolidation of power in Ottawa, that they want to put out more programs, they want to put out more funds, they want to invent basically 6 new types of investment funds similar to the Green Slush Fund. And we're like, great, because that worked wonders the last time you did it. It definitely didn't get wasted or used somewhere else. And so, this is what we're seeing, is that we're seeing this consolidation of power. This will take the production, will take the money, will take the ownership from you as independent provinces, as independent people, and we're going to keep it all in Ottawa, and we'll just dole it out and be very parental in how we think that you should get it. And so that's kind of the way that it looks to be running right now, and Quebec is not for that. So people say a lot of things about Quebec, but one thing about Quebec is that they've got their crap together. They know exactly how to force Ottawa to do what they want. And so I just don't see a situation where they're going to join in with the Liberals. However, if Carney for some reason decides to promise every ounce of Alberta's equalization payments to Quebec, that could be enough. And you'll see Blanchette say, well, why would I turn down $20 billion? Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens, but I am predicting a conservative minority. And so something else that I wanted to show you. Okay, we'll jump into that screen share again. So one of the things I wanted to talk about too was the fact that we're hearing a lot about Western separation. And yeah, I just want to give you a little bit of insight into what Preston Manning has been saying around this topic. So we'll just watch this and then we'll talk about it.
What is different this time around? I don't remember the sentiment being this loud or this organized.
Well, it's just 9 years of misrule, 9 years. And the concern of the indifference of Central Canadian media, Atlantic Canadian voters, absolute indifference to this sentiment. Nothing changes. It just gets worse. And there's simply a skepticism about Mr. Carney making a 180-degree turn, saying, well, now climate change is not a big fixation. Now they'll build pipelines. Now they'll scrap the carbon tax. That is simply not believed by hundreds of thousands of people, because they see behind Mr. Carney 23 MPs and cabinet ministers who 2 months ago were saying exactly the opposite. In fact, Mr. Carney 6 months ago would have been saying exactly the opposite. So there's a complete skepticism on the part of hundreds of thousands of people. And this is not just confined to Alberta. The fact that people in central Canada even think this is just Alberta. No, this is Alberta, Saskatchewan, large parts of Manitoba, and northwestern and western British Columbia.
I've listened to some of those podcasts.
So he's totally right. He's saying that basically, if we're not careful, we're going to actually alienate Alberta if they haven't been alienated already. So I'm going to stop sharing there so you can actually see me. So yeah, basically, we can't trust this government. They keep saying the opposite thing. And so when you look at the fact that, Carney says in French that, oh, we're never going to put a pipeline through. But then when he was talking in Alberta, tells everybody that, oh, don't worry, we're going to get your oil to extra markets. We're going to build pipelines. We're going to make it happen. And then when you read his book, Values, talking about how we need to get off of oil and gas and how people are just going to have to accept a lower quality of life, a lower standard of living, because we're not going to be using resources anymore, and specifically not using hydrocarbons anymore. And it's just like, how can you say all that in your book at your time when you were working for BlackRock Light, we'll call it, and now like you're in government and you're going to say something completely different? Like it doesn't add up. And it's exactly like Alberta smells it. They can tell it. Like, and hats off to Danielle Smith, because she's been calling it out the entire time, saying like, no, this guy keeps flip-flopping. It's not actually the case. So it's one of those things, right? And then exactly what he's kind of mentioned there, about the 25 Liberal cabinet ministers and the folks in behind Carney, who all, a couple months ago were all saying the opposite. That's a huge part of it, right? Is that I think what the Liberals did well and what the Conservatives did poorly, getting back to that marketing thing again, is the fact that everybody hated Justin Trudeau. Okay, so basically they said, oh, Justin Trudeau is the worst. He's the reason for all this, downfall of society. And I think that he wore way too much of the blame. I'm saying I'm a Justin Trudeau apologist, but what I'm saying is that it was so much more than that. It was the entire Liberal Party. When you see the F Trudeau flags, it should have been F the Liberals, because now what happened is they did this, whole switch up of their leaders, and they're like, look, we're different. See, we've got Carney. It's totally different, even though we know for a fact that all these Liberal ministers who were a part of this are still in the background running the show. And there's no way that one man could be responsible for all that crap. It took his entire crooked team, after they kicked out the people who had any integrity at all, like Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott and others. They just cleaned house, and they were like, okay, we've got our yes men who are going to help, support whatever crazy things that we're going to put through and whatever scandals we're going to do. And that team is still there. So I just look at this and say, the West is correct to be skeptical, because regardless of whatever, clown you put in the spot, it doesn't matter. You could put a dancing monkey in there and it wouldn't matter, because the people around that person, it's the entire team, it's the entire Liberal Party, are corrupt. And that's why, any vote for that party is just going to be a vote for more of the same. And that's why I just think it's so wild when Mark Carney keeps coming out and being like, I'm an outsider, I'm totally different. It's like, great, sure, maybe I don't even believe that, but like, let's, for argument's sake, that you are an outsider, you are different, it's not, you're not the same. It doesn't matter, because you've still got the same everything else around you. So getting to some super chats, David Edwards said, if the Bloc goes with the Libs, it'd make their party irrelevant like the NDP. The Bloc is the alternative to the Liberals in Quebec. They will not join. Exactly. And Big D says, a lot of Albertans feel held hostage by the government that hates them but loves their money. The separation sentiment is not surprising. I love my country but hate being beholden to Eastern Canada. That's the thing, right? And so it's interesting because Atlantic Canada and Alberta, and out west in particular, I feel like we have kind of this mutual understanding of, in Atlantic Canada, a lot of our youth go out to Alberta to go get educated, go get a job, go get a trade, and often don't come back until they're in their retirement age, and they come back east to retire. So you see that kind of like bounce back and forth. I don't know if you've ever heard the song 2 Weeks by the East Pointers, but they're a band out of PEI. And they've got a whole song, speaking about the fact that you've got East Coasters or Atlantic Canadians going out west to make money and come back. So there is this kind of understanding that that's a relationship. But when you just hop over just a little bit into Quebec and Ontario, they're like, nothing exists past the Quebec border, so Atlantic Canada doesn't exist. And then they just look at everything past the Ontario border as just a piggy bank to help fund their projects, like that high-speed train that they're going to put in between Quebec and Ontario, which, you know what, like, all honesty, like, I think high-speed trains are amazing. You look at what they've done in Japan, you look at what they've done in Singapore, even in China, they have them. And you go, why in this day and age are we a country this large with not that technology? So I think that's fantastic. The problem is it's this government that's going to do it, that are going to borrow money from God knows where, or raise taxes or print money so that our value of our dollar goes into the toilet. And that's how they're going to fund these projects. And it's not sustainable. And so that's why we have to look to like the conservative platform and say, okay, if they're actually going to start lowering our national debt so that we're not paying $50 billion a year in debt servicing fees, more than what we're paying for healthcare for the entire country. Like, this is what I'm looking at going, okay, so lower that, realize some of those gains, unleash the potential of the Ring of Fire, put data centers in the north, start actually doing things, building things, making things, and producing things in our country that the world needs and wants, instead of sending out our resources as, they're just as raw materials. Like, put the add value into it. And that's kind of what the conservative plan is. We'll start to see that money come in. We'll get ourselves out of the hole that we've been put in for the past 9 years. Do I think that it'll be overnight? Absolutely not. But would actually get to a place where we would be able to afford things like high-speed rail across this country, and we'd be proud of it. So these are the kind of things that I'm looking at going, holy crap. And gonna go back to your chats again, because I feel like I've just been yapping at you. Milch cow. Yes, exactly. It is the milch cow. Good call there. And then David Edwards says, hey man, that's how the Librax look at the country, not the people of Ontario. Stop painting with such a wide brush. Fair enough. Not all Ontarians. But yeah, no. So Ontario, Quebec politicians for you. They're the ones that are looking at this going, the country ends at Quebec. The country, ends at the border of Ontario. And also, like, it's just hard too, because when we look at the way the vote happens, I feel bad for you folks out west, because what happens is that, we start voting in Atlantic Canada, and we're looking at how Atlantic Canada is going, and we're going, okay, this might tell us what the rest of Canada looks like, but we're really quite small. We make up about 4 to 5 million people. And so when you get to Quebec and you start to see those votes come in, and then you see votes start coming in from Ontario, like the election is pretty much already said and done before you get to even Manitoba, which feels kind of crappy, honestly, not gonna lie. And so it makes it hard for the West to feel like they are, having an impact. But I think that in this election, though, it's one of those things where it's crunch time. Things are so close, which honestly is wild to say that things are this close after this, carnage of a 10-year government. Um, if we need to get to a state where every seat matters, and I think we are in a state where every seat matters, and people just have to get out and vote and have to make sure that their riding goes blue. Just me and Nicole. Do you think popular vote? Sorry, I've got my camera like right in front of my chat. I'm gonna move it. There we go. Do you think popular vote system would be better? So this is one that I've kind of been asked multiple times to actually make a separate video on, specifically proportional representation and a new way to organize our voting system. The problem with proportional representation is you still run into an issue where you can manipulate the vote. So I don't love it. I'm sorry, David, I don't believe that I like the electoral college system either, like the US. I just I'm not quite sure. It's kind of one of those things that we saw when Winston Churchill was talking about democracy. He's like, it's the best of the worst. And that's kind of really how I feel about it too. If you want me to do a deep dive on proportional representation, I'll definitely make a video about that. I know I've been asked a couple times. Tony, I know it's electoral college, not electrical college. And Bob, should you bring a pen? I did a video the other day on that. I don't think it really matters if you bring a pen or if you don't bring a pen. Do not bring crayon like the person who voted PPC did. I don't know if they'll count it. I think that they still actually will count it if it's written in crayon. But just don't. Crayons are for children. Please do not bring a crayon. But yeah, and if you want to bring a pen, go nuts, bring your pen. I don't think that you're going to see a situation where people are changing votes on the ballot. And kind of what I got into the video was the fact that you have observers and witnesses that are there the entire time, and they're watching as people are counting. So political parties will actually have people at each poll that will sit there and just watch the count and watch people. So if anybody was to like try and pull out an eraser and change something, there's no way that's going to happen, because you basically have to buy out all the observers, all the counters, the person actually running the poll station. Like you'd have to pay off everybody in the room, and then it doesn't make sense. And plus, that would only be one poll. The amount of money that you'd need to be able to corrupt an entire system across an entire country to make it actually feasible to change our election, I don't think it's going to happen, guys. So pencil, pen, Sharpie, crayon. No, I reject that. Don't bring the crayon. Just don't do that. It doesn't matter. I think that whatever you mark your ballot with, they're going to count it. So I wouldn't be worried about that. I'm not worried about the vote counting in our election. What I am worried about is we're on the eve of our election, and there's still a lot of people that are still thinking that the conservatives are the way to go, or sorry, not the conservatives, the liberals are the way to go, which just blows my mind. And I wanted to show you another thing here. So Polymarket, I'll share this with you so you can see it. Where are we at here? Old Stock Canadian, that's the name of it. That's the account that was shared this. So if you look here, we have next Prime Minister of Canada after the election. 80% Mark Carney and only like 20% for Pierre Poilievre. Like, this is Polymarket, so not a polling system, but basically what people are betting that is going to be the outcome. Uh, so I'm actually looking at this being like, I might want to put some money in in here because I truly believe that we're going to get a Pierre Poilievre minority. Um, so there might be some money to be made here. We'll see. But yeah, basically just looking at this, and it's kind of like disheartening. And I have a lot of friends and family in my circles that are posting things like, we can't let Pierre Poilievre win because if he wins, hate wins. And it's just like these things that are just absolutely wild. Like why people are actually even believing this. So I'm gonna stop sharing there. But yeah, if Pierre managed to surmount the trials and tribulations as well as the major hindrances placed before him by foes and supposed allies, it will go down as the best victory by a conservative. I agree. Okay, so you know, honestly, hot take, but the fact that you have folks in the Conservative Party right now putting out like campaign style like videos and things, and I'll own it. My premier in Nova Scotia did the same thing. He put out a video being like, "Hey, I'm Tim Houston. Look how great I am, and look at all the wonderful things I've been doing. Just putting this out there." P.S. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why do we have people that look like they're running for the next leader of this party before we even had the election? Don't do that. So yeah, I don't know. It's wild times, guys. Even here on the Sunshine Coast, Salt Spring, many we know voting Conservatives first time ever. That's true. I do also want to say is that when I went to the rally, the one thing that I noticed most about the rally was the amount of young people. And I really truly believe that young people are going to be the deciding factor in this election. Um, Everybody's seen the meme by now of the old dude who's a liberal giving the finger to everyone. Um, but yeah, I really think that the young people are what's gonna be the change in this election, and they're not picking up the phone. Like they'll barely call their friends, let alone pick up a phone for a pollster. So I think that that's something we're not seeing, and that's something that hasn't been taken into account in these polls. So yeah, and I also wanted to show you something else that I found on here that I thought was interesting. I'm just navigating right now. So Adub's Corner. So this is another person on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. I'll share the screen again. So Adub kind of did a really good job highlighting exactly what I was saying about the rally. So they said this was the first time that they've ever been to a rally, that he's a political independent and always will be. He doesn't go to rallies, don't donate, but they basically broke it down to say, you know, for a midday event, the place was surprisingly well populated. It was in an airport hangar, so it was somewhat cavernous and difficult to hear at times, but you could move freely around 3 to 5K people. This is kind of the same thing that we saw when we were in Trenton, where it was like this is a town of 2 grand, and we had easily 2,500 people at that rally. And so, you're seeing the people that are there eagerly awaiting the arrival of Pierre Poilievre, which like this is kind of like a badass picture. I'm not gonna lie. This is pretty awesome. The jet pulls up, which I know is like it's a classic politician move. You park the jet, you walk out of the jet, you look like a rock star. It's pretty cool. I like it. I would like to do that. Not that I'd ever want to run for political office in Ottawa. God no. But to walk out of a jet with my name on it, that'd be pretty cool. Pierre began by honoring his hometown roots and then acknowledged his family. But yeah, this is exactly what it was like. People excited, hopeful, youthful, and then also just like you had people from every walk of life. You had like you can see the diversity in even like the skin tones of people that are there, like the ages of people are there, the gender differences, like it's everybody is showing up. It's actually looks like Canada. It doesn't look like these Carney rallies where it's just a sea of white hair. And so they even mentioned this. What struck me the most with the crowd, progressives loved droning on about inclusion and diversity while ignoring diversity of thought. The diversity of people supporting at this rally was immense, and the number of young people attending was pronounced. And then just kind of going on about like, oh, here's the really big one. It says, ultimately, I realized that this is a working class movement. There's no longer right versus left. There's only privileged class versus the rest of us. Several people didn't look like me, and we shared smiles, knowing glass of discourse, and expressing common understanding. So I think that's what really gets to the heart of it, is the fact that, you know, this is really kind of the rest of Canada versus the elites. And I think it is an election of globalism versus nationalism. You know, do we take care of the people here that can't afford food, that can't afford housing? That, you know, do we leave the government in power that was responsible for tent cities? Or do we actually change to a government who's rejecting global elites, that are rejecting, you know, wasteful spending? Like the amount of money that this past government has just completely made evaporate and disappear is insane. Tammy Peters says, with Carney's carbon border adjustment, won't the East pay more for the oil and gas they import if Carney wins? Yes. Yeah, 100%. So one of the things that Carbon Carney wants to do is put in extra tariffs on goods and services that they deem to be harmful to the environment, or that they deem to be, uh, you know, creating extra CO2. Um, oh no, I'm sorry. I gotta stop for a second. Jody, Reg fans, or your karaoke last night was epic. Jasmine posted on her Instagram account. No, oh, no, it's alive. It's out there. Shoot. I'll have to go. I'll have to go find that. Anyway, yeah. But basically, back to carbon border adjustments. So they want to put a carbon tax on anything that comes into this country. So basically a tariff. We're going to end up paying that as citizens. And then this is something that's going to come out in your power bills. It's going to come out in your food bills. It's going to be everywhere. And like the states are going to look at this and say, well, this is just another form of tariffs. So we're going to counter tariff your carbon tariff, because China doesn't follow any carbon tariffs. The US doesn't follow any carbon tariffs. India doesn't follow any carbon tariffs. Taiwan doesn't follow any carbon tariffs. And these are all places that we import stuff from. And so we've got a government here who's just yet again going to put another tax on us. So yeah, remove the consumer carbon tax, but place it on in different ways that are less obvious. And I feel like Carney, that's what he kind of did when he took office. He was just kind of like, no, Justin, you did it wrong. I like what you did, but you need to do it in a sneakier way so that Canadians can't tie it back to you. But Rev Bert Bethian, I don't know how to say that. I have a feeling this is going to be a 2.0 version of the 2024 election. Nail-biting polls for months, followed by unprecedented conservative turnout. You know what? I hope so, man. I really, really hope so, because looking at this, even Jasmine was saying to me last night at the bar, she was like, am I going to have to look for a new place to live because I've spoken out so highly against the Liberal government? I don't know. You know, it's one of those things where, and then the other part of it, like, do you continue to work in a place where they just tax the living soul out of you, and everything that you make just completely gets taken from you and given to Quebec and Ontario? Nationalism. I hope Josh is enjoying being a father. Love you, truth tellers. That's from 2 flips for 5 twists, or 4.5 twists. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. And yeah, I was on the phone with Josh today, and he is pretty tired, but excited for the live tomorrow. And I know he's got a few things planned for tomorrow, so definitely be watching for that. Because we know that with Josh, the one thing that he loves his family first, and definitely with that new edition is definitely going to take a lot of precedent. But he loves all you guys and the channel so much. I know it's killing him being away. Just me, Nicole. I've been voting for 40 years. I'm 58. I've never been so anxious. I know, right? It is. It's one of those things. It's kind of it's hard. It's yeah, I'm looking at it going, okay, so I have a skill set that I know that they could use in the States, and I would make the same salary that I'm making right now, but in American dollars with less tax. And I have a beautiful home in Nova Scotia. I was very fortunate. I think I told the story a long time ago when the podcast was a little bit smaller and we were focusing on kind of the business design and a little bit of everything. And one of the things I had said was, when my mother-in-law passed away and we were given a bit of an inheritance, we took that inheritance, invested it with the crash that happened in the stock market. I was able to buy up a bunch of bank stock using that inheritance, and I actually borrowed a ton of money from my line of credit and took a risk and was able to kind of double that money because the market came back. And that was the only way we got into our house, was just because somebody passed away, a market crash, and just luck that we took a risk and it turned out well. So looking at this, I'm like, okay, so am I going to lose all this if he sinks this country and we have to leave? I don't know. So it is a scary time, and it is something that's making a lot of people anxious, making us anxious too. So you're totally right, Nicole. And Tammy says, will Jennifer L be joining you on the live tomorrow? I don't know. I was talking to Jen the other day. We'll have to see. I know that she's been so busy. She started her own company, and she's been trying to still do a bit of TikTok, trying to still do a bit of work with nations. But yeah, so I don't know. I'll have to check in with her again tonight and see what she's thinking, but we'll see. We'll definitely try and pull her in because she's always a good time. She has that dry humor that seems to always pull us in. Christian Searle says, hope this is not my echo chamber talking, but CPC majority. I I hope we get a CPC majority. I just don't think it's likely. I think that we're more likely to see a minority with an agreement with the bloc. That's my prediction. That's my guess. And I'm gonna show you one more thing that kind of I thought was really interesting. And it gave me a little bit of hope. And this is outside of the echo chamber a little bit. So I'll show you this. And it's from our favorite Miss Ruby Dala, who tried to run against Carney, but they kicked her out, remember? So Ruby Dallas says, if you're a woman, a Canadian from a multicultural community, a young Canadian, or a hardworking taxpayer, just remember what the Liberal establishment did to me and all my supporters across Canada. We set out to make history with progressive policy ideas that were in the need of the hour for our country, instead of the Liberal Party wanting to do the same old Trudeau 2.0, a rigged leadership race with 3,500,000 stolen, and the same team as Trudeau for the past 10 years. Can you really trust the Liberal Party with 4 more years? Read that again. Then make sure you do the right choice for a change tomorrow. I was just like, holy crap. She threw down. She was not pulling punches. I have to hand it to Ruby. I'm like, Ruby, I know you say you're a proud liberal and all that other crap, but like, dude, read the room. Your people are the conservatives. Get in that party. But yeah, exactly, Jason. It would be cool if Ruby turned blue. Well, it's just it is. It's one of those things where you look at it and you're like, girl, what are you doing? You're in the wrong side. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not thinking that we're going to get a majority. I do think that we're going to get a minority of a conservative government, just because I really think that there's so many people who've been deeply affected. Like we started this whole conversation on the marketing. Like we're talking like CBC is $1 billion propaganda machine. Like, and they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to basically be the mouthpiece for this government. And when Pierre came out from the very beginning attacking the CBC, which I still think was a stupid idea, why would you attack the people who hold the mic and the camera? Like, do not do that. even if, like, I totally agree, CBC should be defunded, but do that after you get elected. like slowly start clawing that crap back, and then at the same time, it doesn't make the people who work for the CBC so scared anymore, because CBC has been laying off folks left, right, and center, and then they still continue to get their bonuses from the federal government and are not apologetic about it. And when Pierre Poilievre is like, well, if they're going to just pay out this money to bonuses, we shouldn't be funding it, which makes sense. But that wasn't the message that was put out there. It was like, CBC's fake news and we're going to defund them. And I'm like, oh man, like that's going to turn people off so bad. And it really has. So I think that it's things like that have really, really influenced a lot of voters. And also just the ridiculous work of Jagmeet Singh to try and create division around the idea of like abortion and women's rights and everything else, and the rights of LGBTQ plus people. And when I'm like, and disabilities too is another one. And I'm like, you realize that Pierre Poilievre, his second in command, is an openly lesbian woman. Then his own daughter is, disabled. She has a disability. And then his wife is an immigrant. Like all this crap you've been saying, like he's way more diverse than the Liberal leader. You got Mark Carney, who's white as snow, and his, British wife there. It's like, really? And the same guy who gets out there and is just like, oh yeah, I think we're the most European of all the other non-European nations. It's like, give me a freaking break. Like, I know that I've talked to a couple of friends of mine who are Indigenous, and they're like, that was nauseating when we heard that. Like, that's ridiculous. So looking at all this, I'm just like, it's got to sink through at some point. But even when I brought that up to a friend of mine who had posted this post about, Pierre Poilievre being against all these different, minority groups, they're like, oh, he's just saying that right now, and it doesn't matter because he's going to turn on those people. I'm just like, oh my God, it's just, it doesn't make any sense, honestly. And so Christian Sorrell says, if Carney wins, buy gold. Oh man. So I would love to get a buddy of mine. He is finishing up his degree right now. He's going to be a chartered professional accountant. And one of the classes that he took was all on currencies. And I've always heard this, like, when we went to fiat currency and we got off the gold standard, that's when everything went downhill. And I was just like, yeah, get your tinfoil hat, blah, 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 blah. And then when I started looking into it, I was like, there's something to this. Like, there actually is something to this. You look at basically where fiat currency got introduced and looking at the separation between purchasing power and wages, and you just see this like complete divergence where income inequality just like completely explodes after fiat currency is introduced and the gold standard is removed. So yeah, if Carney wins, definitely buy the gold, because it's something that's really interesting, and I'd love to dive deeper into that. But maybe after this election, we'll take some time to look at that, because it's really interesting, and I don't know what you do to, because you can never get back to that. We don't have enough gold in this world to take care of all the debt we currently owe from this past 10 years. So I don't know what you do to fix it. Maybe it really is just kind of like slowly bringing us back and trying to build that gold up in our own country. But who knows? The Jillian Davis says, the book Wexit, The Reluctant Rebellion, published in 21, was born of the sense of betrayal in the West when the Liberals were voted in again. It will happen again, but this time it might not be reluctant anymore. I totally agree. Podcast I follow, it's called The Looney Hour. They actually had an individual on there talking about how they're worried that even a Pierre Poilievre minority might not be enough. That they're worried that, if Carney wins, it's definitely going to be bad. We're going to see some like disharmony across this country like we've never seen before. But they're saying that if Pierre Poilievre even gets a minority, that it might still not be good. It still might be bad. Share 1965, coming in hot. History is repeating itself. Oh, I just lost you. There we go. History is repeating itself. In 1984, the people were tired of the first Trudeau government. Mulroney defeated the selected PM John Turner. We've seen the sentiment again. We have a new moon tonight, new changes. I don't know what the moon is doing, but I totally agree. When we first looked at this, I was like, this looks exactly like Trudeau 1. We're getting Trudeau 1 to Trudeau 2. I do think that you'll see a John Turner situation where they're kind of being forced in with all the same policies of the previous government. And John Turner was like, I had no option. I had no choice. And Brian Mulroney was like, you had a choice, sir. You definitely had a choice. And I kind of see that with Mark Carney too, when he gets up there in front of his rallies and he's just like, I was new. Like I didn't do any of this stuff. I didn't even know what was happening. I'm so unaware. And like, dude, you're either a liar or you're incompetent. And neither one of those are great. So, and maybe a bit of both. But yeah, it's interesting, that's for sure. Nicole, do you think Carney will stay as opposition if he loses? I personally doubt it. I don't think he will. I think he would see that as, you know what, I tried, I didn't get it. And actually, I don't know. It's hard to say because if Pierre Poilievre gets a minority government and the Liberals smell any blood in the water that they could possibly take that down, he might stay on for a little bit to see if he can kind of like poke at that relationship while it's still in its early stages, while it's still fragile. But I definitely don't see him there for any period of time. If he starts to see that is, an unmovable force, kind of like what we saw with Jagmeet Singh and his best friend Justin Trudeau for the past year and a half, yeah, I think that he'll be gone at the first sign of, oh, new job with the World Economic Forum. Sweet. But anyway, yeah. Ariel says, how do you feel that we might be 24 hours away from giving unlimited power to a tyrant who quoted Marx for over 30 times in his book? Yeah, not great. Not great. But at the same time, I just don't think that that's going to come to pass. I'm hoping to God I'm not wrong, but I really do think that we're going to see a conservative minority. It's interesting. I'm hearing things from inside the Conservative Party as well. People talking about the fact that when they're doing their on the ground polling and going around to the doors, doing door knocking, and they're asking folks who are they going to vote for, they're seeing numbers that are like 10 to 20% higher for support than what we're seeing on like 338 or any of those. So Palm Fun confession. I didn't rescind my vote, voted in advance, scrutiny tomorrow night, conservative small majority. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I hope you're right. I really do hope you're right. Just me, Nicole. Portuguese Pie sent an email confirming tomorrow. Wants to hear from you. Oh shoot. Okay, so yeah, so usually there's two of us, and right now where it's kind of just me, it's been a little bit, I won't lie, a little bit overwhelming. I have to give my hats off to people like David from Moose on the Loose or to Jasmine for being able to do this, solo. It's a lot of work. And that also said, Josh does a lot of work. So if I miss Portuguese Pie's email, that's totally on me. I will make sure that I email him back. I know that I also have the Elevate Instagram account on my phone. And one of the things I've realized is that I spend a lot of time on my phone. So I installed this app to kind of like make me do push-ups in order to get away from it. But what it's done is it made me get away from the Elevate Instagram too. And I have a couple people that we're supposed to schedule for for our lives and for interviews that I just haven't gotten to yet. So if that is any of you, I am sorry. It is my bad, and it's we'll be better. I'll get better, I swear. Heckler says conservative majority. Skeptical 59. A conservative majority would restore my faith in Canadians. I think honestly, that's the thing to me that I'm yeah, I don't know. Like, even if the Liberal government came in hot and didn't actually do anything against me personally, like they didn't, try and take Elevate podcasts off the air. They didn't slap us with a CRTC violation, or they didn't, come after my job where I work for a provincial government. Even if all these things didn't happen, I think the part that would be really, really challenging would be looking at the rest of Canada and going, seriously, did you not learn from a decade? I just I think it would be really hard to look at my fellow Canadian and go, yeah, I see you guys and I totally agree with you. So I think that's kind of what is fueling the West too. Like, if the West doesn't see a conservative government, they're gonna go, the rest of Canada doesn't agree with us. So, do we feel like we're Canadians? Because if there's such a big discrepancy, yeah. $2 because you pronounced my name properly the first try. Searle, I feel like that's a pretty easy one. But thanks so much, Christian. I appreciate it. Big D says, we got this, Reg. Conservative majority. Love all that you guys do. Thanks for being an amazing place for great news coverage. Thanks so much for tuning in, Big D. I appreciate it. And thanks so much for this super chat. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. I'm not going to lie. It's one of these things that I never imagined I would be sitting here talking to you folks and connecting with you around politics. It was never my bag. I never thought I would be doing it. Honestly, you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have thought that I would be in med school by now. But fun story about that. I ended up getting a really amazing internship at a hospital working in neurology, and all the patients were like losing their minds in this ICU. And the nurses were asking the doctor, they said, hey, can you give them something to calm these patients down? They're acting crazy, like they're not sleeping at night. We don't know what to do. And so I'm looking at this neurologist like, oh, are you going to prescribe them something? And the doctor is like looking, he's like, yeah, they've been awake all night long, and this is, really hard on the nurses. Guess I'll prescribe them a sedative. And I'm like, the reason why they can't settle down is because there's no windows in this space. So they don't know when it's daytime, when it's nighttime. They can't regulate. And that, to me, I was just like, I said to the doctor, I was like, the reason why they can't settle down is because they don't have windows. They don't need sedatives. They need windows. They need sunlight. And he's like, yeah, but I can't put a window in. I can only prescribe. I can only do what I can do. And so that was kind of, to me, what I was like, you know what? I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be the person who builds windows. I want, metaphorically, of course, I want to be the person who creates some kind of upstream change. And so that's kind of where Josh and I got involved in this podcast. And we were like, you know what? Let's be a part of that change. Let's connect people together, and let's see if we can amplify the voices of things that matter. So NDP needs to recover and distance from the Liberals, and Bloc hates the Liberals. Conservative wins regardless. Chris Cooks. Yeah, NDP is kind of a hot mess. So insight into the NDP. So we had an individual that is very deep into the NDP talking to us, and they were like, the NDP absolutely hates Jagmeet Singh. Like, but the problem is that with the parties, and this is kind of where I wonder, like, I hate the idea of putting a sweeping piece of legislation in, but do you need a piece of legislation that says if you're a party in Canada, you can vote out your leader if you don't like them, right? So I don't know. Maybe we'll see if that's something that's needed, because basically in the NDP party, nobody can get rid of Jagmeet Singh because he has to step down because they don't have a way to get rid of him. And so he's still in power, but they all don't like him, and they're all too scared to say anything because as the leader, he has the ability to say, you are going to run or you're not going to run. And so, yeah, honestly, it's Tony, NDP is a hot mess. Here's where I say, no Shiite, Sherlock. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, Oh, one of the things Jennifer L said that I thought was funny, and that we'll have to do at some point. Um, she was like, "Please, please, at some point on your channel, just like go through a list of all these ridiculous things that that the different parties have put out there." And so she sent me ones of like, it was like the NDP party leaders. They're like trying to do a get out the vote thing, but they were doing it to like hot to go. So they're like, GOTV out the vote. And then it's like, oh, it's so bad. And yeah, it was brutal and it was so cringy. And yeah, and then she sent another one of like a PPC rally where this one guy is just like dancing hard. So I'm like, okay, we'll have to put together a greatest hits compilation of all these different events for you and rank them and rate them with your help. So Christian Searle to Liberal voters, what has Carney really done to earn your vote? What would he stay and represent his constituents if we lost this thing? Exactly. So this is the problem, is that I have a lot of really, really good friends and family that I love and care about a lot who are voting Liberal. And it's hard because one of the like I was out watching the hockey game with one of them, and they're like, I'm in the Canadian Forces, and I heard that he's going to create more housing on the base, and he's going to raise the wages for Canadian Forces workers. And they're like, that's why I voted Liberal. And I was like, did you even look at the Conservative platform? They're like, well, no, I saw on the CBC that he's not doing anything for our service members, so I went with the party that was. And I was just like, love this person, but it was really hard to sit there with that and recognize that like this person is just, they're like the rest of us. They're just trying to get by. They're just trying to, you know, pay for their stuff, be able to live and be able to hopefully own a home. It's just they're going about it in the wrong way, I think, and in a more of a short-term way. So I think that like I don't there's a portion of Liberal voters that I can't stand, but there's a good bulk of them that I think are just worried. They've been scared by the media. They've been scared by the Liberal Party themselves. They are struggling to get by, and they have somebody saying like, "Hey, I hear you're struggling. Would you like some free money?" And that's what's happening, right? They're just kind of being they're kind of being just thinking like that's what they need. They're only looking at their next step. They're not looking ahead of time, or the fact that like when you think about why is it that your food is so much that you need a higher wage? Like that's the question that people need to be asking is, why is it that I need a government program or a tax credit or a heat pump exchange? Like why can't I just go buy the heat pump? Oh yeah, because I'm paying half my salary in income tax and to programs that I will never see a benefit from, or that anybody I know or love or care about will ever see a benefit from, because half these programs are just funding massive Brookfield companies that are going to come in, charge triple the price, and just suck up all the tax dollars. Like it's the same thing when you look at the States and you look at how the insurance companies are working in healthcare there. Um, Honestly, like these folks in the States, they mark up the price of their procedures, the price of their drugs, and these insurance companies are are just kind of paying it out or sucking it up, and they're just getting all of the money. And it's the same thing that's going to happen in Canada with Brookfield companies, where everything that the Carney government has put forward as a possible fund has this element of like, don't worry, it's not going to be for the everyday person. It's going to be something that only these multinational corporations are going to have the ability to even apply for. And then these individuals are going to just, like I said, overcharge by like 3 to 5 to maybe 10, 100 times the price of things, and completely suck up all the tax dollars when we could be using that for better things. Anybody who thinks about healthcare or thinks about the homeless or thinks about those in need should be looking at this going, we should not be throwing money at these large multinational corporations. We need to be putting the money in the hands of people who need it. And that's us. I really think that when society is doing better it's more generous, and we won't need the government. Like that's just what I look at. I look at the fact that like even today, um, like I feel like I make a decent salary in my job, and like I look at like I had a couple of kids in the Canadian Tire that I went to today to go get some grass seed, and they were raising money for their soccer team. And I felt like I had the money, which I know a lot of people don't have the money to support locally as much as they like to. But I was like, I have money right now and I can support this soccer team. So I did. And I look at this and go, if more people felt that they had money, like extra money that they could actually support people with, I don't think you'll see I don't think you'll see this like hoarding of cash. I think you'd actually see Canadian public give to charities, give to food banks, give to shelters, like give to local teams and sports teams and things that are going on in the community. I'm not talking like organized like professional sports. I'm talking about like your local baseball, soccer, hockey teams. And I think you'd see that generosity come back from the public. It's just the public is so strapped right now and being completely wrung out of every ounce of cash that they have that they can't support locally. And now we're looking at the federal government going, "Oh, please, overlords, pay for everything." So it's just it's crazy. It's ridiculous. Exactly. And start businesses too. If people have the financial well-being to be able to start businesses, exactly. We'll start to see those come back. And you have to like I know that it's a stream and I feel like I've just been talking at you folks, but one of the things I'm thinking is like when I look at what it takes to start a business, like you need to have some capital behind you. You can't just go into it 100% blindly. And some people do and they do really well and good for them, but for the bulk majority of us, we can't just like stop making money and let our houses go to the bank like while we start a business. So you have to have a little bit of a nest egg there to be an entrepreneur. And you can't let the government just take every single cent you've got once you start a business. You look at places in the world like that are very successful at attracting businesses, that are successful at, you know, keeping them in their country. They've reduced the amount of money that they charge of those businesses. And eventually what happens is that instead of getting three or four companies that are paying $100 in taxes each, you get 40 companies that are paying maybe $20 in taxes each. Is it less money by each company? Yes, but is it more money overall? Yes, and that's what we need to do. We need more numbers, and we need more breadth and scale and depth in our business sector, and we're just not seeing that because they basically created a situation where you can only be a massive corporation to be able to survive and also survive the changes in policies and legislation that they throw at people. Because like we saw it during COVID, you're seeing it right now with the tariffs. You saw it with the GST holiday. Like the GST holiday, that I looked at that and I went, great, it gives people a little bit of a break, but it's such a burden on the small businesses that like half of them are just like, we don't know what to do with this. This is going to be so much more hours on our back. And so I look at this and go, the only people that they're really supporting in this country with not only their taxation system, but even just the changing of their policies that they change all the time. Um, it's the large corporations, and I think that's honestly the way of the liberals, which is wild to think that that's where we've gotten to, and that because I remember years ago it was like conservatives were big business and the liberals were for the everyday person, and it's completely switched, completely swapped. And William Galloway says, conservative Americans are with you. Look at the last 4 years of Biden. It will take years to fix the mess the liberals have done. Good luck, Pierre. Thanks so much, William. And then Mama Philly 3 says, Pierre Poilievre's Ottawa rally is massive. I'm working the election tomorrow, so I'll have to watch your live stream Tuesday. Going to be approximately 17 hours workday for me tomorrow. Holy crap. I hope you are getting like one of the better paying roles at your Election Canada polling station, because when I was looking at the training videos, I went through and I did a hard deep dive into everything elections. And when I went through and looked at it, I was like, man, they're only getting paid $20 an hour. Like that's wild. I'm hoping it's not that wage anymore and that they've increased that. Madeline R says, If you make enough money to meet your basic needs, you're already in the second tax bracket. Basic income is that. Basic income that is taxed is 1/3 of what is required. Yeah. Christian Searle says, so true, Reggie. The liberals ironically created an everyone for themselves mindset economy. Yeah, exactly. It's exactly all the things that I've already mentioned, right? It's, if people are in a state of fear, scarcity, where they can't even afford their own food, and like to think that healthy food is a luxury item now, like that's what's wild. How are you supposed to give to others if you can't even put good food on your own kids' plates? Like that's what I'm looking at. Stephanie McDonald said, my heart is broken for our kids, and we started saving for their education and a house down payment right after they were born. The libs took the country, and we knew it would be grim. Have hope with Pierre. Blue wave. Yeah, exactly. Right. Um, if- I'm looking at it going, okay, so I have a 2-year-old daughter, and we have a registered savings account for her education. And yeah, it's one of those things like, holy crap, like, are we going to have a country where she's going to be able to take advantage of that, or is the money that we're going to be putting in that just still not going to be enough? And they put limits on how much you can put in that per year as well. So it's it's going to be a race of like, can we keep the value in our dollar enough such that it doesn't completely erase all the money that we put into that? It'll be interesting to see. And Ariel says, if Carney wins, we enter a national unity crisis on the first day. Alberta and Sask be in the process of a referendum being an independent country. I think that will be the case. But you know what? We're getting on to 10:30, and I still do have a day job tomorrow, and we're gonna have the election tomorrow night. But we'll be putting out some videos tomorrow, so we'll be seeing you then. Get in your last few chats there before I take off, and I'll make sure I answer those. But if not, we'll be seeing you tomorrow. And thank you so much for tuning in with me tonight. I hope you found it valuable, and I really enjoyed reading your chats and reading your thoughts and feelings on everything. Like I said, I feel the same way. I feel like it is going to be a conservative win. That's what I'm guessing, and I think it will be a conservative minority. But it would be really freaking awesome if we got a majority, wouldn't it? So let's go to bed with those happy dreams, and have a great night. Tony, good job on the porn star mustache. Thanks so much. Yeah, after the election, it's gone. It's like my playoffs, but for the election mustache. But we'll see you tomorrow night. Have a good night, and we'll see you then.